News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GBNews,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Hello and welcome to GB News on your TV and digital radio. I'm Dawn Neeson, covering for Nana this wonderful week, and for the next 2 hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinions, mine, theirs, but most importantly, yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times disagreeing, especially these two because they're married to one another. Joining me today, it's Conservative councillor and former Conservative advisor, Claire Pearsall, and political editor of the Sunday Mirror and the Sunday People. Sorry, Nigel, I almost forgot that. Nigel Nelson. So, thank you so much for joining me and welcome to the show. Yes, as I said, married couple, so it's going to go all horribly wrong, isn't it? It's a Sunday afternoon, married couple, what can possibly go wrong? Anyways, before we get started, let's get the latest news and headlines.
Good afternoon, it's 4:01. I'm Simon Pusey in the GB newsroom. The family of Archie Battersby are calling for an inquiry following his death, saying no parent or family must go through this again. The 12-year-old died on Saturday in the Royal London Hospital after weeks of legal battles. Archie had been in a coma since he was found unconscious by his mother at home in April. In a statement, the family say they'd had to fight for Archie's right to live with everything stacked against them. Barts Health NHS Trust issued a statement saying medical staff provided high-quality care with extraordinary compassion. Rishi Sunak has criticised his leadership rival Liz Truss, describing her planned tax cuts as starry-eyed boosterism compared to his own clear-eyed realism. Writing in The Times, the former Chancellor said putting more borrowed money into the economy risks making inflation worse. Ms Truss says she'll use an emergency budget in September to immediately cut taxes. She's also pledged to bring forward plans to scrap the national insurance hike by 6 months. Former leadership hopeful Penny Mordaunt told us Liz Truss is ready to take the reins.
I think she really wants to ensure she's ready to hit the ground running, to have that emergency budget, to alleviate some of the cost of living issues that people are facing, but also to create that modern economic framework that we need to really fire up our economy and get things going again. That's what people want to see, and that's why I've chosen her. I've got a lot of respect for Rishi, but I think that she really understands what the nation needs now.
The Tory MP and former Education Secretary Damien Hinds, who's supporting Rishi Sunak, told GB News Sunak would introduce more economic support if needed.
He has been clear that that more help may be needed and can be forthcoming, and it's wrong. It's absolutely wrong to put out of the question. This is about a unique situation that we find ourselves in. Combination of COVID and Putin's aggression in Ukraine, and people are finding it extremely difficult to deal with that.
Detectives are urging the public to provide any information they may have about the disappearance of a missing student nurse. Owami Davies was last seen in the early hours of the 7th of July as she walked along Derby Road in West Croydon. 5 people have now been arrested, 2 on suspicion of murder and 3 on suspicion of kidnap. 4 of the suspects have been released on bail. The Met's Specialist Crime Command says officers are working tirelessly to follow every line of inquiry. Flowers have been left for an 11-year-old girl who died after going missing at a water park in Windsor. Members of the public joined emergency services in the search at Liquid Leisure yesterday afternoon before she was rushed to Wexham Park Hospital. Her death is being treated as unexplained and an investigation is underway. Israeli and Palestinian fighters have agreed a truce from this evening following 3 days of violence. Egyptian negotiators have been liaising with both sides to de-escalate. The region has seen shelling from both sides in recent days following a strike by Israeli forces on Friday against jihadist militants. Taiwan's military says it has detected 66 Chinese Air Force planes and 14 Chinese warships conducting drills within the Taiwan Strait today. 4 days of exercises by China were due to end, but China has since threatened to conduct drills of these kinds regularly. It follows a visit to Taiwan by the US House of Representatives Speaker Nancy Pelosi. President Zelensky has called for a stronger international response to what he's described as Russia's nuclear terror. It's after Putin's forces shelled the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant, the biggest in Europe. During a phone call with the European Council president, Zelensky called for sanctions to be imposed on Russia's nuclear industry. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now let's return to the show that we've got coming up now.
Hello, you're with Dawn Neeson. I'm covering for Nana this week. So let's get started, shall we? Right, ask a school kid in the UK what they want to do when they grow up, and the chances are they'll say a footballer or a social media influencer. Some might even want to be the next Prime Minister, and most of them could probably do a better job, couldn't they, to be honest with you? But ask the equivalent child in Albania, and they'll more than likely draw you a picture of a boat heading for the UK. Because a leaked report to the Mail on Sunday from the Navy has revealed that 4 in 10 boat migrants crossing the Channel are from this small Balkan country. A country that, admittedly poor, hasn't had a war for 25 years. These mostly young men, let's be honest, they are, we've all seen the pictures, aren't fleeing a war, famine or torture like Afghanistan. In fact, they're not fleeing anything at all, are they? It's the clearest evidence yet that our asylum system is being used by economic migrants, migrants who mean that those genuinely seeking refuge on our shores are losing out. The report, understandably marked official and sensitive, shows that 1,075 Albanians crossed the Channel during a 6-week period this summer. That's almost 40% of the total number. To put this into context, during the same period there were 373 from Iran and 363 from Afghanistan. It's the first time an official report has exposed what is actually going on with the migration mess that has seen 18,000 people make the dangerous Channel crossing this year alone. And they're just the ones we know about. Talk to anyone who lives on the Kent coast and they'll all have tales of boats landing and the people in them just running off before even the officials can find them. This isn't just any old report either. It follows surveillance by the Royal Navy and Defence intelligence experts of 9 Albanian criminal gangs who charged their fellow countrymen £5,500 to be smuggled to the UK. They advertise their services on TikTok. You've just been hearing Darren talking about that one. And there are no shortage of takers. Indeed, they are so brazen about the whole thing that one boat of male Albanians unfurled their national flag while crossing the Channel and put the resulting video up on, yes, you've guessed it, TikTok. And like many of the dinghies organised by the criminal gangs, they set off from a sleepy beach resort in between Calais and Dunkirk, a beach that has become the epicentre for these smugglers. Not that the French appear to be aware of this, obviously, as despite the UK government, that's us by the way, handing them £114 million to stop this dangerous trade, officials are mostly conspicuous by their absence. Look, no one is pretending Albania is the land of milk and honey, but it is a member of NATO, has applied to join the EU and has a growing economy. Those crossing in the boat could simply apply for a 180-day visa to visit the UK. But why don't they? What are they hiding? What is their real agenda? Albanian criminal gangs are a growing menace in the UK, especially in the modern-day slave trade. There are so many questions we all deserve answers to. Even those well-intentioned voices on the left, you know, Archbishop Canterbury, Gary Lineker, arguing that UK needs to accept everyone arriving in a dinghy from France, must surely be alarmed by this report today. Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss both vow to be tougher than one another on the Channel problem. But they would, wouldn't they? Meanwhile, Priti Patel's Rwanda plan is still caught up in a tangle of European Court of Human Rights legal arguments. The Mail on Sunday's article on this report highlights how the Albanian mafia are now widely recognised to be the most powerful criminal gang in the UK, controlling the cocaine and heroin trade. It's estimated they control more than 75% of the country's brothels, and in London, Soho alone, they earn more than £15 million a year from prostitution, many of those women trafficked. It's a mess that our political leaders need to prioritise. But if the figures are too much for you to get your head round on a sunny Sunday afternoon like this, just think of the beautiful face of Sabina Nessa. This vivacious young teacher had a whole life ahead of her, with all the hopes and dreams a 28-year-old should have. Instead, her life was brutally ended in a London park, murdered by an Albanian who arrived in a lorry illegally in 2015. This story isn't about the politics of Gary Lineker versus Nigel Farage. It's about lives. It's about saving them. Right, before we get stuck into the debate, though, here's what else we've got coming up today. At 5 o'clock, it's outside Parliament. Today, I'll be speaking with the former chair of the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs Select Committee, Neil Parish. Remember that name, the tractor thing? We'll talk the highs and lows, the lessons learned, and what happens next on the outside. The Transport Secretary plans to treat killer cyclists the same as motorists. Now, I'm a cyclist fan, I'm really interested in this one, by introducing a death by dangerous cycling law. OK. Grant Shapps says it will close a legal loophole, which currently means a cyclist who kills a pedestrian can only be jailed for 2 years. Right, OK, so for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should cyclists who kill pedestrians face tougher sentences? And in Worldview, the Republican who voted to impeach Trump is projected to win the primary. But will this affect Trump's chances of running again in 2024? It's amazing what's happening there is happening here, isn't it? People coming back. And tell me what you think on everything we're discussing by emailing gbviews at GBNews UK or tweet me at GBNews. Right, let's get cracking, shall we? Welcome again to my panel, Conservative counsellor and former Conservative advisor, Claire Pearsall, and the political editor of the Sunday Mirror and Sunday People, nearly forgot again, Nigel Nelson. Now, happily married couple. I've said that before, but that's because I'm part of a happily married couple and my husband is currently at football enjoying himself and keeps sending me messages. So how long that happily married thing's going to last, I don't know. But let's go to our first discussion, shall we? The story I was just talking about. Claire, Nigel, what do you think? This I think, frankly, shocking report that's in the Mail on Sunday today about the number of Albanian migrants that are making up the people in these boats crossing the Channel. Claire, what do you think? I mean, horrifying?
It's not surprising. I spent 17 happy months at the Home Office looking at immigration, and none of it's a surprise. We always knew that the criminal gangs came out of Albania and there was a lot of money in trafficking people into the United Kingdom. Used to be in the back of lorries because this was a time pre-COVID and all the rest of it. But we do have an agreement with Albania to return these individuals. So it should actually have now been strengthened. Priti Patel signed another agreement in July of last year, which strengthens up all of those protections that we have to return them. So why we're not doing it a lot quicker? Well, I think somebody needs to ask that question.
Yeah, Nigel, why aren't we asking that question? Why are they not being sent back?
Well, then they are being sent back. A plane load of Albanians, in fact, left last week. So they are actually going back when you can catch them. These are obviously economic migrants. When they get here, they're not going to apply for asylum. What they're going to do is they're going to try and disappear into the black economy. So the question really is, is our asylum system completely cockeyed? And I would argue it is. We have a rule at the moment that an asylum seeker can only claim asylum when they actually arrive here. If we had a system whereby they could claim asylum somewhere else, on their way to France, say, which would be at British embassies or something like that, what would happen is the Albanians wouldn't get asylum, and those people genuinely would. What they would also do is the only way you'll deal with the people smugglers is to reduce the demand, so there's no longer a supply, and fewer people would then start crossing the channel. So it's that kind of big change that's really needed.
So do you think the Rwanda scheme will work? Once we can get past the legal arguments with the European Court of Human Rights, do you think British Rwanda scheme has a chance... Stop giggling, Claire. Well, has a chance of working?
It's not. I mean, the Rwanda scheme was just something as a sop to people who rather like things like that getting tough on immigrants.
The old red meat line.
Yeah,
red
basically.
meat to the voters.
Look, at the moment that Rwanda can take 200 people. There were 29,000 attempted crossings so far this year, of which 18,000 got to our shores. 200 doesn't make any difference at all. And will it discourage Albanians from coming over here? Of course not. What they're trying to do is not claim asylum. They're trying to disappear into the system. So they're not the people who end up in Rwanda.
Yeah, so it brings us down to the $64,000 question, or rather a several hundred million question. Why aren't the French doing more?
Well,
why aren't they on the beaches?
That is the eternal question. And I have stood on a beach in Calais in January at midnight, looking at the problem. And the French will tell you, it's a very large coastline, there are so many problems. And I don't disagree with that. It is enormous, their coastline. However, they know exactly where these boats are going from.
Most of these boats are going from one tiny little stretch
in between
beach.
Calais and Dunkirk.
Yeah.
And it is well known for that. So, I think they really do need to now step up the actions there. We've given them more money recently to do this.
Yes.
And we've given them drones and we've given them, beach buggies, you name it. They've had it all. So they need to now play their part. But I do think that some of this is a Brexit backlash. They don't particularly like us. They haven't liked us for many years, as it is.
They haven't really liked us for a few centuries, have they, if we're honest here?
Not since Agincourt.
Well,
we all need to
move on.
So we all need to play our part, and there needs to be a little bit of diplomacy going on from both sides. I don't think we've always acted in the best interest either. So those conversations need to be opened back up. They need to be pulling their weight. The Rwanda plan, I think, is really dead in the water. I don't think it was ever designed to work in the first place, if I'm honest with you.
No, I think you're right. But it's amazing, we're going back to the French, because I'm slightly obsessed by this story today, as you might have spotted. It's like they can spot one British trawler doing something slightly dodgy in the water, but they can't spot thousands of boats seemingly leaving from a very small bit of beach. I mean, just stop the boats, just sort of like pierce the boats. I mean, they're rubber dinghies. Just stop them setting sail.
Well, Does
that make sense?
I'm not sure you can go around piercing dinghies. It sounds like popping balloons, really.
But I mean, work. They wouldn't float, would they?
The French could certainly do an awful lot more. And I just think that they feel it's not really their problem. If these people cross the Channel and end up in Britain, why should they worry about it? So we keep giving them money to try and get them to be more forceful about it. But they're really not bothered. They're passing through France. They're going somewhere else. It ain't a French problem.
They just want them off of France, don't they, basically?
Yeah.
So the frustrating thing with this is everybody watching this at the moment is what is going to be the answer? If Rwanda isn't going to work, the French don't seem willing to help, how do we stop it? Are we ever going to stop this?
Immigration as a whole is always one of those issues where everybody says, we need to fix something, we need to do something.
Something. So something,
and
isn't
unfortunately, something isn't always the answer. We need to look at a wider example, and you need to look, as Nigel said, actually, what's going on in the rest of the world. You need to look at how you process, why people are coming, where they're coming from, the routes they're coming in. Because actually the majority of people in refugee camps do not want to end up in the United Kingdom. They want to go to Canada, they want to go to America, other parts of Europe. We take a small number. It's enough. We have enough people with everybody coming across by boats. But I think you just need to look at it sensibly, and I think you need to take some of the emotion out of it on either side.
Yeah.
You can't let everybody in, but you can't just stop everybody either. Have a sensible conversation. That's what I'm hoping for.
And as you say quite rightly, Claire, there's an awful lot of emotion and anger on both sides of this, and it gets into that hideous debate where no one's actually solving anything at all. Right, OK, we move on for a bit now. You're with Dawn Neeson. I'm covering for Nana this week on GB News, on your TV and digital radio. After the break, I'm asking, should cyclists who kill pedestrians face tougher sentences? The Transport Secretary plans to treat killer cyclists the same as motorists by introducing a death by dangerous cycling law. Tell me what you think about this one. Send us an email to gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can also tweet @GBNews, and there's a poll up right now asking, should cyclists who kill pedestrians face tougher sentences? Cast your vote now. But first, it's the weather forecast.
Looking ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK will be mostly dry, although cloudiest in the north with light rain for western Scotland. Here are the details. A fine end to the day across southwest England with plenty of late evening sunshine. It will remain dry throughout this evening and tonight with temperatures only slowly falling away. Across southeast England, clear skies will persist this evening, leaving a fine and dry night, although warm with plenty of sunshine to end the weekend. A dry and fine evening across South Wales, although there may be some patchy low cloud, mist and fog tonight, particularly in the north. There'll be plenty of sunshine around to end the weekend across the Midlands. Tonight, a combination of clear spells and light winds brings a risk of some patchy mist and fog forming. Patchy cloud will persist across much of northeast England this evening, though there will be some late evening sunny spells too, remaining warm this evening and overnight with temperatures only slowly falling away. A mostly dry end to the weekend for southern Scotland with some sunny spells around. However, there may be the odd spot of light rain and drizzle over high ground. Any cloud across Northern Ireland will continue to break up this evening to allow for sunny spells. Clear spells tonight could lead to some patchy rural mist and fog forming though. A largely dry night, though warm, especially in the east. A chance of some mist and fog in the west. That's how the weather is shaping up overnight into tomorrow morning.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Hello, you're with Dawn Neeson. I'm covering for Nana this week on GB News, on TV and on digital radio. Now it's time for the great British debate. I'm asking, should cyclists who kill pedestrians face tougher sentences? Now, the Transport Secretary, that's Grant Shapps, just in case you've forgotten, plans to treat killer cyclists the same as motorists by introducing a death by dangerous cycling law. Shap said it will close a legal loophole which currently means a cyclist who kills a pedestrian can only be jailed for 2 years. So, for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should cyclists who kill pedestrians face tougher sentences? I'm joined by former editor of The Sun and my old boss, Kelvin Mackenzie. And hello there, Kelvin. How are you?
Hi. Yeah, not too bad.
OK. Kelvin, you hear me? You're quite quiet.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry for that. Is that any better?
Yes, absolutely. Lean close to the mic. And for me to tell you you're quiet, I don't think anyone's ever said that to you, have they? No. Right, come on. Kelvin, so what do you make of this? I mean, you know, treat cyclists the same?
I was astonished to discover that they wouldn't face the same potential sentences as a car driver. And I would think with the number of cyclists now on our roads, it's quite a dangerous area. I don't know whether you, Dawn, have been around London over the last couple of years and watched the explosion in, well, I'll call them Deliveroo drivers, but courier drivers. It is a very dangerous area, London. If you are thinking that the traffic light represents anything more than a vague signal to some of these cyclists that they should be stopping. It is an extraordinary moment. I don't know whether this is true, and your viewers will tell you whether it's true all over the United Kingdom, that most of the traffic signs are basically ignored by cyclists in any event. And secondly, I think the other issue to face in relation to whether they should face charges or not is also, they should also face financial charges. They should be licensed. They use a lot of the road. They dominate the road around my way anyway. And I would like to see them actually paying a bicycle tax in the same way as those of us who don't cycle pay car tax.
So how do you even legislate that, Kelvin? I mean, do you make them have number plates on their bikes?
You're doing exactly the same way as you do. You go and buy a bike. You can't buy a bike without paying a license fee. You can't be on the road without paying a license fee. What is wrong with that?
Do you know how many people just buy? Do you know how many people just buy bikes on the QT from a mate, or possibly some stolen bikes? A lot of that goes on.
This is what we have a police force for, isn't it? To say, have you got a license? And if you haven't, by the way, and I'm not talking about a 50 quid license. I'm talking about a license perhaps costing £300 or £400. This will be a serious revenue raiser, and it may actually lead to a lot of people deciding that they don't find cycling as cheap as they had previously thought.
Hold on, Kelvin. We are trying to encourage everybody to get out of their cars, get on their bikes, save the planet, Fitness, we have an obesity crisis.
I don't think the obesity crisis is being solved by cycling. In fact, the more cycles that there have been on the road, the fatter people have become. So I don't think there's a QED in relation to that. I'm in favour of keeping fit. If you can possibly keep fit, I'm sure there's lots of other ways of keeping fit. You might even try walking. Who knows? Most of the people use it in a what seems to me quite an aggressive way, and perhaps we should have an aggression tax as well, since we're going to have a hole about 8 miles wide. If Liz Truss gets in and starts having unfunded taxes, perhaps my ideas might fill that hole.
Kelvin, I mean, 2019, there were 5 pedestrian deaths, including a bike ride. Meanwhile, 48 cyclists and 305 pedestrians were killed by cars. So surely it's the cars that are the danger on our road, not the cyclists.
Well, I'm not suggesting for 1 second that car drivers who kill cyclists shouldn't face the full wrath of the law. All I'm saying, when it's the other way around, I mean, I don't know whether, Dawn, you have noticed how fast the cyclists can travel now. And, 20, 30 miles an hour, downhill, I don't know, 40 or 50 miles an hour. These are very dangerous if things go wrong. So surely, Dawn, you're not in favour of actually just saying to the cyclist, I tell you what, kill who you like and get away with it. Whereas if you're a car driver, face the full wrath of the law. You're not suggesting that, are you?
No, I'm in favour of safe, responsible cycling, but I do, Kelvin, love the idea of an aggression tax because just curious how much you would be fined. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, I'll be fine, but I don't rise a cycle either.
Thank you so much for that. I'm also joined by cycling vigilante Dave Sherry. So, Dave, good afternoon to you. Let's have a look at what you've been saying on this one.
Well, with the previous speaker, taxing cyclists and this, that and the other, and that ain't going to work, to be honest. It's sounds a good idea, but it's made a fantasy. With regard to the health benefits of cycling, it's proven. You burn calories, you save fuel, everyone's a winner. With regard to naming and injuring people on the roads, it's very few numbers, but at the end of the day, if you kill someone on the road, you need to be held accountable. And the way I see it is treat cyclists like any other road user. So if you ride in a reckless, dangerous manner and you do kill someone, you need to face the full force of the law.
So you're agreeing.
Give you an incentive to ride correctly.
Right, so you're agreeing with what Grant Shapps actually says, that, you know, if you are a cyclist and you kill somebody, you should face the same penalties as a car driver.
Yes, and basically the law does need to change. You can't be going around killing people for no apparent reason, and you should be held accountable. Chaps, he's got the idea, but he's not going to be around for long. He's going to be on the next reshuffle. So, but at the end of the day, it will improve road safety. Things will get, and it will give people a bit of reassurance that there is accountability going on. So that will build a picture. It may hopefully improve cycling abilities.
As I say, Dave, surely the point of this debate is that we encourage people to cycle more because, as you know, it is good for our health and it is good for the environment, but we also encourage them to cycle responsibly. So maybe more education about how to cycle safely. And maybe Kelvin's right, maybe we do need some sort of register of people that are buying bikes and owning bikes.
Yeah, but then you'd be doing the horses and pedestrians and mobility scooters. It's not going to work. But I'll be honest with you, I've completed like my bike ability test. But good idea. I think it should be compulsory. And I reckon before you can actually purchase a bike, you do your bike ability level 3 and 4, top banana, you get your 2 wheels. No harm there, don't cost anyone nothing. It's government approved. So I reckon that would stop a lot of hostilities from car drivers talking about like emissions tax and everything else. So people need to think out the box. It's being responsible, looking after one another, but they've got to understand that cyclists are the vulnerable road users. With the recent highway code changes, they have a duty of care.
Yeah.
And it's normally the cyclist who comes worst off. So we're talking single figures with regard to cycling by death. And, you know, it's just one of these things, but it's all being accountable and responsible on the roads. It's not hard. It's not rocket science.
No, absolutely. And pedestrians as well should actually maybe take more care of how they're crossing the road and walking down cycle lanes, etc. So thank you very much for joining us on that one, Dave. Now, I'm going to have a look at some of what you've got to say about this, right? Some of the messages coming in. Maggie, cyclists should be held to account the same way as drivers. So you're agreeing basically with both Kelvin and Dave. They should also be made to be paid road tax. This is the one I have an issue with because I'm not quite sure how that would work. And Nate says cyclists should face tougher sentences for causing car accidents. Personally, I think they should all have to pass a theory test and a cycling proficiency test. That's what Dave was saying, wasn't it? To show they know the highway code. It's only fair. Couldn't agree more with that one. And Reese, you say absolutely they should incur harsher penalties, but not just for killing. The madness we see on a daily basis from cyclists is disgusting. Oh, strong words. They just speed through the parks and nobody does anything to stop them. OK, well, you're with Dawn Neeson, a cyclist, by the way, married to someone who drives a car. I'm covering for Nana this week on GB News, on TV and digital radio. After the break, we'll continue the Great British Debate. I'm asking, should cyclists who kill pedestrians face tougher sentences? You'll hear my thoughts and my panel's thoughts. Conservative councillor and former Conservative advisor Claire Pearsall, and the political editor of the Sunday Mirror and the Sunday People, Nigel Nelson. And then at 5 o'clock, it's Outside, where I interview a former MP or someone who had an extremely interesting career to take a look at what they're doing, life after the job. Today, I'll be speaking with the former chair of the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs Select Committee, Neil Parish. And if that sounds a bit dull, just think Tractorgate, OK? Tractorgate, remember that. We'll talk the highs and the lows, the lessons learned and what comes next on the outside. First, it's the latest news headlines.
Thanks to all. It's 4:33. I'm Simon Pusey in the GB newsroom. The family of Archie Battersby are calling for an inquiry following his death, saying no parent or family must go through this again. The 12-year-old died on Saturday in the Royal London Hospital after weeks of legal battles. In a statement, the family said they'd had to fight for Archie's right to live with everything stacked against them. Barts Health NHS Trust had issued a statement saying medical staff had provided high-quality care with extraordinary compassion. The Environment Secretary is urging water companies to ban the use of hose pipes as forecasters predict dry weather for most of the UK next week. George Eustace says some firms have rightly taken the action to lessen the effects of an unusually dry August, and he's encouraging others to do the same. Last week, Southern Water and South East Water imposed bans for their customers. Taiwan's military says it has detected 66 Chinese Air Force planes and 14 Chinese warships conducting drills within the Taiwan Strait today. 4 days of drills by China were finally due to end, but China has since threatened to conduct drills of these kinds regularly. It follows a visit to Taiwan by US House of Representatives Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Israeli and Palestinian fighters have agreed a truce from this evening following 3 days of violence. Egyptian negotiators have been liaising with both sides to de-escalate. The region has seen shelling from both sides in recent days following a strike by Israeli forces on Friday against jihadist militants. TV, online and DAB Plus radio. This is GB News. Now it's back to Dawn.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Welcome back. You're with Dawn Neeson covering for Nana this week on GB News and on digital radio. So let's get back to our great British debate, shall we? This hour I'm asking, should cyclists who kill pedestrians face tougher sentences? The Transport Secretary, Grant Shapps, plans to treat killer cyclists the same as motorists by introducing a death by dangerous cycling law. Shap said it will close a legal loophole which currently means a cyclist who kills a pedestrian can only be jailed for 2 years. So, for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should cyclists who kill pedestrians face tougher sentences? So let's see what my panel make of this. I'm joined still by Conservative councillor and former Conservative advisor Claire Pearsall and the political editor of the Sunday Mirror and the Sunday People, Nigel Nelson, a happily married couple. For now. Right, OK. Claire, Nigel, do either of you cycle, by the way, first of all?
No.
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 OK, right, it sounds like so what do you think of cycling, then? What do you think of cyclists? Are you one of those, are you car drivers that can't stand us?
Yeah.
I'm including myself in this when I cycle.
Yeah, I know. I must admit, I do love the fact that you keep reminding us who the Transport Secretary is.
Well, because most of them are absent at the moment, aren't they?
Yeah,
it's A, keeping track of who they are, where they are, what they're doing, or even if they're on holiday or not at the moment.
Exactly, and I quite like his plans. I'm not sure about calling them killer cyclists. It does sound a little bit sort of Bond villain-esque.
Yeah.
Going on. But
I quite like that image, though, it'd be lycra.
But I do think that they need to be subjected to the same penalties as a car driver if they kill somebody. Absolutely, completely agree with that. And I'd also probably go a little bit further. I, like Kelvin, would like to see some kind of taxation, licensing of cyclists, especially those who ride on pavements. Which, when you live in a rural village and they cut across the pavements and cut across the car park and you've got people wandering around and children and old people, you know what?
That's no way to talk about your husband.
I didn't say that.
No, I did, sorry. Oh, my God.
So I do think that there needs to be harsher sentences for them. You know, add in a lycra tax for some of the worst offenders as well. Because that's all I see on the country lanes. They're riding 3 or 4 abreast on a country lane. Other people need to use these highways. There are horses, there are drivers, there are pedestrians. So, no, you cannot have it all your own way. And I appreciate that you probably are a very, very sensible.
I'm very, very sensible.
You obey the lights, you obey the rules of the road. But some don't.
Yeah, this kind of sums up the prejudice of car drivers
well, this
for
is the thing,
cyclists.
Isn't it? But
I mean, in answer to the original question, yes, they should. As both Kelvin and Dave said, they are road users, should have the same penalties. It's only because an old law is being used for this 2 years maximum. So Grant Shapps is absolutely right. Bring it up to what it would be for death by dangerous driving by a motorist, which is now, since June, has gone up to life. So it's longer than 14 years. Yeah. When it comes down to taxing bicycles, no. On the basis that, again, I agree with Dave, that we're trying to encourage cycling, especially with petrol costs going through the roof, health benefits, environmental benefits, certainly a cycling proficiency test to make sure the cyclist knows the highway code. And a system whereby that if they transgress on the roads, there is a penalty point system in the same way as car drivers.
I must admit, I do agree with you, but I mean, I sort of like, I used to cycle quite regularly, and I used to take part in races, and most people I know do cycle responsibly even. But it's a tiny minority that are giving everybody a bad name. But it's like car drivers. It's a tiny minority of car drivers that give everybody a bad name as well. Like, you know, we're talking about pedestrians and sort of like cyclists on pavements. It's like cars parking in cycle lanes.
Oh, I don't
cutting into cycle lanes.
And
being abusive to people just because you're on a bike.
Yeah, and, you know, and that shouldn't happen. In a perfect world, we would all take responsibility for ourselves and do it that way. But I do think that cycling proficiency or bikeability is a really good way forward. My son did it when he was at primary school, just before COVID hit, and was great. And he can use the road sensibly. But I do think that it needs updating. He did that when he was, 11 years old. And that's it for the rest of his life. I think these things need to be sort of updated regularly so that you keep on top of the highway code. And perhaps Nigel could be the first one to try that out if you're an advocate of cycling all of a sudden. I think perhaps that we could send you out on a bicycle.
Didn't say I was going to do it. I was suggesting how it should work.
Well, exactly. And I think we discussed a lycra tax earlier on, and a lycra tax for bad lycra.
I won't be getting into lycra.
For bad lycra should be
My
very
lycra days are behind me.
Very definitely. But it's an interesting point. We can't afford fuel for our cars at the moment. So, you know, obviously if you're a builder and you're driving around, that's fine, you need a car. But, I mean, surely a lot of small journeys that we do, we can use bikes.
Yeah, most journeys are under 5 miles.
Yes.
We actually do. And there are people now, I mean, Cycling UK have got several case studies at the moment of people who've given up their cars recently because petrol costs were so high, using a bike, and they're perfectly happy about that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So it's like that. I think we've all pretty much agreed on this one that we do need to introduce a system that is fair.
Bring it into the 21st century, basically,
absolutely.
is what we should be doing.
It is incredibly rare, as I said earlier on, I think there's only been, 5 pedestrian deaths involving a bike in 2019.
It isn't a huge number, but I also sort of worry that the safety of the road user as a whole is being missed in this. I mean, there are cyclists, especially in major cities, who, when waiting at a traffic light, if they do, will then lean on the roof of your car.
Really?
Oh, I've had it before. On Tower Bridge, just came up and leant his elbow on the roof of my car whilst waiting.
What did you do, Claire?
I wound down my window, told him to stop it.
In that language, I'm sure.
I asked so nicely, I asked very politely if he wouldn't mind getting his elbow off my car roof. And there was a torrent of abuse that came back at me.
See, this is where we are, though, isn't it? It's the aggression between the two tribes again.
And that's your problem. And I think unless that sort of ends, you're never going to get this argument to be anything other than cars against
But we are
bicycles.
talking about a safety issue, really. I mean, it's the ones who go through red lights when you're trying to cross and things like that, I mean, they're the dangerous ones, and they're the ones the police should be clamping down on.
You know what? Speaking as a cyclist on this, in many continental countries, they have, where it's safe to turn on a left turn, they allow that. So cyclists, if it's safe to turn on a red light, so stopping the traffic going across, but cyclists can turn on a red light, provided it's safe to turn left. So that sort of makes sense in this country as well, and it would stop people jumping the lights and drivers getting angry. So maybe we need to borrow more from, what the Dutch and the French do.
But I think the problem is when the highway code was updated for the new rules that came in with cyclists, there was so much confusion, and the diagrams that the government put out in the highway code was so confusing. I looked at it and couldn't see at any point how I would turn my car left without breaking some code. And they did have to simplify it and rework the document.
Because car drivers were bottom of the priority list, wasn't it? It was like pedestrians, cyclists, horses... Everything else
was above you. So it didn't quite make sense. When you looked at it, I can't actually turn left at all, ever. And I'll have to stop in case a pedestrian that's half a mile down the road wanted to come across this path. So I think we need to be a little bit sensible and pragmatic about it, but also just write it in plain English so that everybody can understand.
And what do you think about now, as Kelvin pointed out, so many places, certainly in London and other big cities as well, so many cycle lanes where cars are stopped from going down there, low traffic neighbourhoods. Do you think it is right for the government and councils to prioritise cycling in cities?
Not to that level. Well, the problem is that just causes traffic jams. And I think that the policy has got to be, in every major city, how do you keep your traffic flowing? Now, that includes cyclists too.
Yes.
So certainly that provisions for them are absolutely right, but not cycle lanes absolutely everywhere, especially on a major highway, where all that happens is traffic hugely backs up. And that's bad for the environment too, because they're sitting there chucking out exhaust all the time.
Yeah, absolutely, that's true, because not everyone's driving an electric car yet, because most of us can't afford them. Right, this show is nothing without you and your views. It's not all about us. In fact, it's more about you than us, to be honest with you. So let's welcome one of our great British voices. This is your opportunity to be on the show and tell us what you really think about the topics we're discussing. This hour, we are heading over to Grimsby to speak to GB News viewer Alan McNilly. Alan, hello, how are you?
Good afternoon, Dawn. I'm fine, thank you.
Good afternoon. So today I'm asking, should cyclists face tougher sentences for killing pedestrians? Lots of people are getting in touch. What do you think about this one, Alan?
I tend to agree with a large majority of what your panel and your guests have said. Short answer is yes. I would go a little bit further on the idea of the road tax and say all cyclists should be registered when they buy their bike. That would help the police return them when they get stolen. But also they should pay some kind of fee. And that doesn't have to be a fee to Her Majesty's government, but it could be a fee to the local council. So you could have a revenue stream into local councils for things like cycle lanes and cycle education for children that could be funded via the cyclists. as opposed to a sort of a road tax for them. I think that would be quite sensible at the end of the day.
Actually, yeah, Alan, do you cycle yourself?
Not anymore, but I used to when I was younger. And I enjoy cycling, but there are many poor cyclists out there in this day and age, and I wonder how many of them have actually read the highway code. And I think where the issue is going to get worse is with these electric e-scooters. Well, I mean, they're really a cycle in their own right, and they're quite treacherous. So there doesn't seem to be any kind of governance coming out about how those are policed, if you like, on the roads. I've come up across them in the middle of winter going down the road with no lights on, no yellow jackets, doing about 45 miles an hour in the middle of the road. And, you know, somebody somewhere is going to get seriously injured. So you can move from cyclists to e-scooters. They're kind of one and the same.
That's a really good point. And I mean, e-scooters can go up to like 55, 60 miles an hour. Thank you so much for that, Alan. And I actually... Yeah, and thank you so much for joining us today, Alan. I actually almost got, ironically, knocked off my bike by someone on an e-scooter in a cycle lane, which they are allowed to use, by the way, but somebody with headphones on so they couldn't hear what they're going, they had dark glasses on, it wasn't great light. So I think, you know, in my defence as a cyclist, they are more dangerous. So, in any case, lots of you have been getting in touch with this one. So let's see what some of your views are on our messages. And Victoria, you say dangerous cyclists should face tough consequences, as should dangerous motorists. I say fine those who ride on pavements and go through red lights. Maybe the authorities could confiscate their bikes too. Oh, God, not my bike. I love my bike. Holly, you say anyone who has killed someone should be given a tough sentence. And, of course, I totally agree. It doesn't matter if it happened in a fight or because of a disagreement or because of a stabbing. Surely cyclists shouldn't be an exception. To be honest with you, I couldn't agree more. James, cyclists appear to demand all the benefits of being on the road without any of the responsibilities that go with it. Meanwhile, Paula, you say, I'm sick of cyclists bombing down the road and ringing their bells to deter pedestrians from crossing the road. It's not the Tour de France, the speed I cycle, and never is, believe me. And you say you have nearly been knocked over by a cyclist as well. Well, I hope it wasn't too bad and you're OK. Paul, you say no one riding a bike is intending to hurt anyone. Accidents should be treated as accidents. Actually, that's a fair point, one we hadn't considered, really. Ian, meanwhile, adds there should be tougher restrictions on where and when people can cycle to prevent deaths from happening. Right, there's also a poll up on Twitter today throughout the show asking, should cyclists face tougher sentences for killing pedestrians? 95% say yes and 5% say no. Oh, interesting one. So, anyway, you're with Dawn Neeson. I'm covering for Nana this week on GBNews, on TV and digital radio. After the break, the Republican voted to impeach Trump. Is that man again? Never goes away, does he? Is projected to win the primary. But will this affect Trump's chances of running again in 2024? First, it's a short break.
Hello, I'm Alastair Stewart, and I'd invite you to join me at noon on Saturdays and Sundays for Alastair Stewart and Friends. I've been in this business for over 40 years. Now, here at GB News, I've never been happier. I get to choose the big stories that really interest me. We hear what you have to say, and you hear what I have to say. I really hope you can join me, noon on Saturdays and Sundays. We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GBNews.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go? Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Hi, you're with Dawn Neeson. I'm covering for Nana this week on GB News, on TV and on digital radio. Right, now it's time for Worldview, or as we've just called it during the break, Trump Watch, but you know what we mean in any case. Today, we are crossing over to America. Dan Newhouse, one of the members of Congress who voted to impeach Donald Trump, is projected to win the Republican primary. He's poised to move forward to the general election in Washington state. Now I'm joined by the host of the Politics People podcast, Paul Durridge. Lots of P's in that, Paul Durridge. And you are going to explain exactly what is going on with the whole Donald Trump thing. Is he going to come back in 2024? Hello, Paul.
Hello. Yeah, we couldn't get Paul Durridge. I hope Paul Durridge is a worthy substitute.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'll do my best.
Look, I haven't got my glasses on, love. It's middle-aged eyesight.
My own family can't say my name. Don't worry about it. It's fine. So,
Paul, I managed the Paul bit.
Dan Newhouse has managed to stave off the Trump candidate in Washington state. Okay, and the liberal press is cock-a-hoop because they think this is now some routing of Trump. What's actually happened is that Washington state hasn't voted for a Republican president since Ronald Reagan. So it's always a Democrat state. Only 3 of the congressional seats in Washington state are actually Republican held anyway. There's 10 of them and 7 of them are Democrat. So it's a Democrat state. If Trump had been successful in having his candidate actually beat Mr. Newhouse, then it would have just been personal for him being one of the so-called Republicans, the Republican in name only, the rhinos voting to impeach Trump after the January the 6th riot, shall we say. And so what has to be kept in perspective is that since Trump left office, there's actually been 188 candidates nominated by Trump or supported by Trump who've been successful in their primaries, and only 14 that have failed. So there's a lot, like I said, there's a lot of mainstream media kind of support of Mr. Newhouse, but it's a blip. Trump's actual support amongst Republican voters has actually increased 10% this year. He's gone from 59% for approval rating for a 2024 bid for the presidency to 69%. These are the recent figures from CPAC in the last 24 hours. So, if anything, Trump's influence is increasing, and this is a blip basically in a Democrat state.
That's really interesting you say that, because despite the inquiry that's currently going on into the January the 6th riots of Capitol Hill, Trump is still gaining in popularity.
He is. I mean, again, it's not dissimilar to what we've seen in the UK with Brexit. This is not about party politics any longer. There is a fundamental divide in society, and Trump represents a wing of society that basically says the system is broken. There's only one party. It's not fair to the little guy anymore. And he is seen as a champion. I mean, this guy is filling stadiums still. And you have to keep him off. You have to have him banned from Twitter. You have to keep him off mainstream news to be able to actually thwart his obvious kind of support in the country. Friday night, he's filling stadiums. Again, all his opponents can't fill telephone boxes. So, no, his influence is growing and growing, not subsiding by any stretch.
So do you think it's slightly like we've got over here at the moment, the situation with Boris Johnson, is it's politics is more about personality than actual policies.
No, I actually don't. I don't think it's about personality. I think it's nearer. Politics is now about principle. It's how do you want your country run? Do you even recognise that a nation is a nation? I think, you know, to expand it, I think it's nationalists against globalists is really what's happening in the Western world. Do you think that you can't run your own country? Or do you think that you have to be part of some huge conglomerate to be successful? These are the fundamental principles now. People like Dan Newhouse who are voting against Trump, it's kind of like suggesting that, you know, Boris Johnson and John Major are in the same party. You know, it's just like, look, it's just a political stripe and it's a convenient box to tick, but they actually don't represent the same principle largely. And that's what I think is happening, is that people have seen through, this is the wonderful thing about things like GBNews and social media. People have actually been able to have peer-to-peer communication and talk to other people that feel the same way, that feel the system is broken. And it's the people against the system is what's actually happening. I don't think anybody is so stupid anymore that they can just be impressed by a personality.
I wouldn't hold your breath on that one, to be honest with you, Paul. How do you think Joe Biden's performance is helping Donald Trump in the popularity stakes?
Well, it's kind of you to call it a performance. It's more of a kind of, it's largely a retirement from politics on the world stage whilst actually being in office. It's quite a remarkable thing. He's just recovered from COVID. He's just recovered from COVID, which is marvellous news. So he'll be taking those Air Force One steps, two at a time, downwards, obviously, but he's back to his full fighting fettle. No, I mean, look, the fact is we actually have -1 president at the moment. It's quite a remarkable state of affairs. Things are happening. I say, to be fair, I was challenged last week. Biden has had his best week in office since he, like I said, since the coup or since Trump left office. And he has had his best week since he started. He's managed to get his own party to vote for one of his bills. I mean, that's the level of competence and support. I mean, it really is. It's like, this is a red letter day. If you read the liberal press here, you'd think that basically that we're living in some sort of Democrat utopia. It's just like, no, he managed to get one of his own bills. It still isn't finally through the Senate, but it's just happening now. He's managed to get one of his own bills through, and that is a successful week. So that's what we're dealing with. Trump is literally a more successful politician on the golf course currently. And I'm not saying that I am a huge Trump fan, and this is not just hyperbole. He is being more influential in American politics right now on the golf course than Biden is in the nursing home next door to the Oval Office.
Oh, damning indictment there. Paul Dudderidge, did I say that correctly?
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah. Whatever you say is fine by me.
Paul, thank you very much for joining us today. Good to hear from you. Right, well, golly gosh, politics. I mean, you know, you think it's bad over here? Try being an American. Right, you're with Dawn Neeson. I'm coming from Nana this week on GB News, and more to come in the next hour. You're with Dawn Neeson, covering for Nana this week on GB News, on TV and on digital radio. For the next hour, me and my panel will be taking some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. But first, let's get the latest news headlines.
Good afternoon, it's 1 minute past 5. I'm Simon Pusey in the GB newsroom. The family of Archie Battersby have said they want something good to come out of this tragedy as they call for an inquiry following his death. The 12-year-old died in the Royal London Hospital on Saturday after weeks of legal battles. He'd been in a coma since he was found unconscious by his mother at home in April. The family say they'd had to fight for Archie's right to live with everything stacked against them. Barts Health NHS Trust issued a statement saying medical staff provided high-quality care with extraordinary compassion. Liz Truss has pledged to cut taxes immediately if she wins the Tory leadership race, a plan criticised by her rival Rishi Sunak as being unrealistic. Writing in The Times, the former Chancellor says adding more borrowed money to the economy would make inflation worse, describing Liz Truss's plans as starry-eyed. The Foreign Secretary says she'll use an emergency budget to cut taxes as well as bring forward scrapping the national insurance hike by 6 months. Former leadership hopeful Penny Mordaunt told us Liz Truss is ready to take the reins.
I think she really wants to ensure she's ready to hit the ground running, to have that emergency budget, to alleviate some of the cost of living issues that people are facing, but also to create that modern economic framework that we need to really fire up our economy and get things going again. That's what people want to see, and that's why I've chosen her. I've got a lot of respect for Rishi, but I think that she really understands what the nation needs now.
Tory MP and former Education Secretary Damien Hinds, who's supporting Rishi Sunak, told GB News Sunak would introduce more economic support if needed.
He has been clear that that more help may be needed and can be forthcoming, and it's wrong. It's absolutely wrong to put out of the question. This is about a unique situation that we find ourselves in. Combination of COVID and Putin's aggression in Ukraine, and people are finding it extremely difficult to deal with that.
Detectives are urging the public to provide any information they may have about the disappearance of a missing student nurse. Owami Davies was last seen in the early hours of the 7th of July as she walked along Derby Road in West Croydon. 5 people have now been arrested, 2 on suspicion of murder and 3 on suspicion of kidnap. 4 of the suspects have been released on bail. The Met's Specialist Crime Command says officers are working tirelessly to follow every line of inquiry. Flowers have been left for an 11-year-old girl who died after going missing at a water park in Windsor. Members of the public joined emergency services in the search at Liquid Leisure yesterday afternoon before she was rushed to Wexham Park Hospital. Her death is being treated as unexplained and an investigation is underway. Israeli and Palestinian fighters have agreed a truce from this evening following 3 days of violence. Egyptian negotiators have been liaising with both sides to de-escalate. The region has seen shelling from both sides in recent days following a strike by Israeli forces on Friday against jihadist militants. Taiwan's military says it has detected 66 Chinese Air Force planes and 14 Chinese warships conducting drills within the Taiwan Strait just today. 4 days of exercises by China were due to end, but China has since threatened to conduct drills of these kind regularly. It follows a visit to Taiwan by the US House of Representatives Speaker Nancy Pelosi. President Zelensky has called for a stronger international response to what he's described as Russia's nuclear terror. It's after Putin's forces shelled the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, the biggest in Europe. During a phone call with the European Council President, Zelensky called for sanctions to be imposed on Russia's nuclear industry. In sport, England have won gold in the hockey for the first time at the Commonwealth Games, beating Australia. The women's hockey team, who are 4th in the world rankings, won 2-1 against the Hockeroos at the University of Birmingham Hockey Centre. The Hockeroos have remained unbeaten against England since 2013. The 3-time silver medalists' victory came less than 24 hours after the men's team suffered defeat. They were also playing against Australia. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now it's back to Dawn.
This is GB News and you're with Dawn Neeson covering for Nana this week, and for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion, mine, theirs, but most importantly, yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times disagreeing. And still to come, there's lots more, don't worry, still to come. In just a moment, it's Outside, where I interview a former MP or someone who had an extremely interesting career to take a look at life after the job. Today, I'll be speaking with the former chair of the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs Select Committee, Neil Parish. We'll talk the highs and the lows, the lessons learned, and what comes next on Outside. Coming up, it's the Great British Debate this hour too. I'm asking, should students have to study maths and English beyond GCSE? Rishi Sunak has announced the education policy he hopes to implement should become the next Conservative leader. His plans include creating a new British baccalaureate, which should make the study of English and maths compulsory beyond GCSE. So email me at gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet us at gbnews. Now it's time for Outside, and today I'm speaking to former Tory MP Neil Parish. Neil began his political career in local government before becoming a member of the European Parliament for South West England over 20 years ago. After 10 years of working as an MEP, Neil became the Conservative MP for Tiverton and Honiton, only resigning earlier this year. The former politician made headlines after it was revealed he had reviewed pornographic material in Parliament twice and has since described the incident as a moment of madness. So I am actually joined by the man himself, Neil Parish. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome
Dawn,
to the show. Lovely to have you.
Thanks
for dropping in on a lovely sunny Sunday afternoon. We've just been discussing it's lovely outside and it's a bit nippy in the studio. Look, I mean, I hate to go straight into this, but I mean, Tractorgate. Does that word haunt you?
I think it will haunt me, but I think, 3 months on, I think, my wife and I are moving on, and what I'm now really is reviewing what I've done in the past and see how I can do good in the future on food, environment, on fair share, delivering food to poorer people, all sorts of things I sort of worked on in Parliament over the years. So I think, 3 months on, move on and get on with life, really.
But you did mention your wife, and I have to bring her up. I mean, if it was my husband, I would want to take the nearest sharp implement to various parts of his anatomy. And you're on a farm.
Yes.
There's lots of sharp implements around. So, I mean, how has she coped with it?
She
Are you all intact still?
Just about, I think, is the answer. And in fairness to Sue, she is, a great support. And there have been a number of moments of madness in my life. And I am a man that sort of does things and perhaps has no patience. And so I think she's got very used to me. And I think after 41 years, we get on okay. And I think the one thing she admits with me is I might be frustrating, I might do all sorts of things, but I've never bored her. And I think in some ways that's probably what I don't know whether she enjoys it, but that's life, basically, yeah.
That's 41 years, that's a long time as well.
Well, it's a long time for her, especially, yes.
I have to ask, I mean, once, OK, is a mistake. Twice?
Well, that's why I resigned. And like I said, I think what I want to do now, like I said, is outside of Parliament, look to help charities, look to, we have the situation now, don't we, in the Ukraine where Russia is destroying the country and the people. And of course, food is short. And I want to see more food produced in this country. I want to improve the environment, but let's not plant trees where we can grow good food. Let's take the more marginal land. Let's be sort of really practical about how we move forward, because I'm worried that we're sort of... Environment is important, but if you've got no food, as you say, if you're hungry, there's only one problem you have, and that is you need food.
Yes.
And you see, we are a country that's relatively wealthy even now and can buy food, but many of those developing countries in Africa can't, and that's why I'm very keen on that.
So how do you, in your former local constituency, how have people reacted to what has happened to you? I mean, obviously, you've turned it round. You are, you are working on very good things now. But what has the reaction been locally to you?
I mean, I think they think I'm a very stupid man, but actually, because I was actually a very good constituency MP, worked very hard. And so, I mean, I've been to, both the Tiverton, the Mid-Devon show and the Honiton show just on Thursday. And, I mean, people are still bouncing up to me. We're still, putting the world's right. I do have a very good sense of humour. I have recovered that. Had gone for a while because of my stupidity and what I'd done. So I think, people, I think psychologically you've got to get it back out there. You've admitted your mistake. You've left Parliament. But I think they still want me to pursue the countryside farming agenda, because, you see, I'm a politician that could deal with the theory and then work on the practice. And that's the trouble. You see, a lot of the policies that come forward from government don't always work. And if you're a practical farmer, I can say to DEFRA or whoever, that won't work, because the farmers won't buy into it because they can't see how it's it's going to work. And so all of those things, is going round and round in your mind. And so then, you see, I was doing a campaign with Fair Share to get another 5 million for people that can't afford food. And with the cost of living crisis and everything that's going on now, it's going to be more important than ever that we do that. And then, public procurement, why don't we have more local food going into hospitals and schools? All of these things, government's very slow and bureaucratic. That's what, frustrates me. Really.
Interesting you mentioned that, Neil, because, I mean, you did resign. I mean, it did take you a while, to be fair, but you did resign, so on a point of principle, and you apologised.
Yeah.
So how do you feel now, looking at some of your former colleagues in Parliament who aren't exactly as pure as a driven snow, let's be honest here, the fact that they're still in their jobs? Do you think there is a lot of dead wood that needs to go?
I mean, I think, it's for them they have got to come to that decision. I think there's too many of them, employ expensive lawyers to sort of try and keep them in place. And I think in the end, if you've made a mistake, it's probably better to own up to it and to leave, and then to rebuild your life and hopefully try and do some good with the rest of your life. I think some of them are just sort of hang on in there. I'm not sure it'll do them a lot of good in the end, but of course in the end it's their decision, and it's for them to make that decision, and in the meantime, like I said, they're still there. But I'm trying to get on with it, because it's not about me at the end of the day. It's about what I can do good in the world hereafter, and I've got to sort of get over the fact that I may not have liked the way the party treated me or the whip's office or what have you. Get on with it, Parish, and get out there and do some more good, because lots of people need help out there. And because I worked as 6 years I was chair of the select committee. You work across party. I used to hold the ministers to account. I don't think that helped me sometimes when needing help from them, because I was a very strong scrutineer. If we needed Labour to pick vegetables, well, where Home Office Minister is the Labour? We've set up a task force. Well, you've ignored your task force. Why did you ignore your task force? That's what it's there for. And so those sorts of things, you need to get in there and make things happen. I suppose that's my problem in some ways, is that you were in the middle of it all, made a terrible mistake, you leave, which was the right thing to do, but you were sort of halfway. We were doing an inquiry into the welfare of farmers and all of those things, and actually the community farm network they actually rang me up through all these troubles, and actually were very good to give me advice when you were at a very low moment. So farmers are very isolated, very often financial difficulties, rural population. That's partly one of the reasons I went into politics in the first place, was because farming was great, but you need people, and I like people, and I enjoy people, and I'll enjoy talking to you this afternoon. And I think what GB News is a rural slot, and I might know a man that could do it for you, but being very cheeky. But
I'm sure you can.
That I think is where I hope that I can not only sort of do good, perhaps on charity side, but also, don't forget, over 6 years, you can imagine the number of people I've interviewed and asked questions of, and when they don't necessarily want to give you the answers, I sort of press them. And also, if you're a panel of people, you make sure that all the witnesses are giving you answers, and that they're not isolated. And so all those sorts of things, I just feel that I need to use that to good, really.
Yeah, and because people are very disparaging of politicians at the moment, often with good reason. But I mean, your physical and mental health after what you've been through, I mean, how has it affected you?
I mean, my physical health is probably better, because I'm combine harvesting. I'm doing more practical work. I've lost weight, but as I said in one interview, I wouldn't recommend this way of losing weight.
It's a bit drastic.
It's a bit drastic, but physically I'm feeling okay, and mentally I'm feeling a lot better. I mean, sometimes you wake up in the morning and say, "What a stupid man you've been," and sometimes you sort of wake up and think it hasn't happened. But less of that's happening now, and I think it's, like I said, I've got to get over. It's not about me. It's about what I can do and what I can do good. And I've got a delightful wife who is very supportive. I've got a good family. I've got both son and daughter give me good advice. So they gave me the advice on to resign in the first place and all of those things. So I think we pull together as a family, and let's get on with it, isn't it, really?
Your daughter and your son gave you good advice to resign. Do you think they would give that advice to Boris Johnson at the moment as well?
Well, I think certainly my son would, because I got a son who is a sort of middle of the road Conservative. I've got a daughter who was a Jeremy Corbyn supporter. So
that's an interesting household mix. Yes.
So we have some great conversations with Harriet, and I tease her a lot because her house has gone up in Bristol, and I said, well, you're a champagne socialist, so but your capitalist system has done you well, and she just says, well, go away, Daddy. But that we have a healthy debate about it. Like I said, Jonathan is a fairly solid Conservative with 3 or 4 of his mates, and they tell me what the younger generation think about the Conservative Party. Possibly not a lot at the moment, because we've got to get our act together and get on with it.
So I'm going to be cheeky. Who are you supporting?
I'm supporting Rishi, you see, because I actually think that while not all of his policies are perhaps been brilliant, what he will do is face up to the state of the economy. And I just rather feel some of Liz Truss's economics and her sums don't really add up. And I'm not sure how you give a lot of tax cuts when you're already borrowing a lot of money, and we need cost of living help to those with energy and all those things. So, and I think my view is, if you ask the Conservative voter, I think you would probably get Rishi as the leader. I think if you ask the Conservative members, dare I say it, it'll probably be Liz Truss.
And Boris, would Boris still be an option?
He's certainly, as far as the people you speak to. I mean, when I go around the show, when I went to a party locally for a friend who's a butcher, why did you get rid of Boris then? And you get a lot of that. Now, there are reasons, because Boris was very good with the big picture, but of course did have a little bit of a problem with a few porky pies, really. And the trouble is,
you resigned on a point of principle, so surely Boris should do the same thing.
Yeah, but I mean, Boris bounces about, and he is Boris. And the trouble is, I don't think he sort of sees things in the same light. And so, therefore, as far as he was concerned, as long as he dealt with the big picture, everything else didn't really matter. But the trouble was, you see, over the parties, had he admitted them in the first place and held up his hands, I think he'd be still there now.
Yes.
But he does sort of fabricate things, doesn't he? And then he gets them. And see, over the Pincher thing, it was a complete microcosm of the whole thing again. And then,
Which was the final straw, wasn't it?
Was the final straw. And, of course, I didn't help him much by the fact that the by-election had also gone. I don't plead guilty. I plead guilty for resigning. I don't plead guilty to the result, because I think that had a lot to do with the Prime Minister himself at the time and what was going on. But,
would you like to go back, Neil?
We'll have to wait and see, won't we? And I think I think what I need to do is like I said, do some real good for society, and see where we are, and see how I feel, and see how people are reacting to me closer to the election. Because I was tempted to stand as an independent immediately, but that would have been far too soon.
Yeah.
And so, and of course, as Harold Wilson said, and I found 5 days in politics a very long time, let alone a week. So, it's where will we be in a couple of years' time? What will the situation be? And is there a role then for an independent? We'll have to see.
Well, interesting. And one final question, and I have to ask this question. Did you buy the tractor?
No, I bought a truck instead.
We'll be very
and a cattle trailer.
Very, very careful how we say that. It's a truck and a cattle trailer. It's been absolutely wonderful talking to you. Thank you so much. And good luck with all the good you are trying to do now. And it's nice to actually chat to someone that is turning things around and making it work for the positive. Thank you very much for joining me, Neil. Very good to have you in today. Right, coming up, it's the Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, should students have to study maths and English beyond GCSE? Rishi Sunak has announced the education policy that he hopes to implement should become the next Conservative leader. His plans include creating a new British baccalaureate. Well, I'm not saying that right, am I? But, it's like a mini A-level thing, which would make the study of English and maths compulsory beyond GCSE. But first, it's the weather forecast.
Looking ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK will be mostly dry, although cloudiest in the north with light rain for western Scotland. Here are the details. A fine end to the day across southwest England with plenty of late evening sunshine. It will remain dry throughout this evening and tonight, with temperatures only slowly falling away. Across southeast England, clear skies will persist this evening, leaving a fine and dry night, although warm with plenty of sunshine to end the weekend. A dry and fine evening across South Wales, although there may be some patchy low cloud, mist and fog tonight, particularly in the north. There'll be plenty of sunshine around to end the weekend across the Midlands. Tonight, a combination of clear spells and light winds brings a risk of some patchy mist and fog forming. Patchy cloud will persist across much of northeast England this evening, though there will be some late evening sunny spells too, remaining warm this evening and overnight with temperatures only slowly falling away. A mostly dry end to the weekend for southern Scotland with some sunny spells around. However, there may be the odd spot of light rain and drizzle over high ground. Any cloud across Northern Ireland will continue to break up this evening to allow for sunny spells. Clear spells tonight could lead to some patchy rural mist and fog forming though. A largely dry night though warm, especially in the east. A chance of some mist and fog in the west. That's how the weather is shaping up overnight into tomorrow morning.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
You're with Dawn Neeson. I'm covering for the lovely Nana, who's having a well-earned rest this week on GB News, on TV and on digital radio. Now, it's time for our Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, should students have to study maths and English beyond GCSE? Rishi Sunak has announced the education policy that he hopes to implement should he become the next Conservative leader. His plans include creating a new British baccalaureate, which would make the study of English and maths compulsory beyond GCSE. Sunak has criticised the existing A-level curriculum for being overly narrow, arguing that it does not adequately prepare young people for future economic opportunities. So, I'm asking, should students have to study maths and English beyond GCSE? I'm joined now by English student at Queen Mary University of London, Anna McGovern. And Anna, you've got a lot to say on this. Welcome to the show, my lovely. What would you like to say about Rishi's proposal to make everybody, and I'm with you on the maths thing, I think, study maths and English beyond GCSE?
Thank you, Dawn. I genuinely think it is such an insane idea to introduce. Yes, students should have a basic understanding of English and maths up to the age of 16, and that's why it should be compulsory up to that stage, because you do need a basic understanding of these subjects, especially when you're thinking post-education. However, with A-levels, the whole point of undertaking A-levels is the fact that you're able to specialise in subjects that you're interested in to then go on to university and then then study a core subject that you want to specialise in and then maybe have a career in. And I think, like for me personally, when I was studying GCSEs, I got 2 9s in English and an A star during my A-levels in English literature. So English was always my strong point. However, in maths, I got a U when I first took the subject. And that was after me studying very hard because I've always been very bad at maths. And it took me several attempts to actually pass my maths GCSE. But for me, I have many questions about this policy because especially when students are taking their A-levels, will they do 3 A-levels and the English and maths alongside their exams? Like, this will create a lot more pressure on students and limit their opportunities to be going to university. And I think Rishi Sunak should instead be trying to focus on maybe improving schemes such as apprenticeships or other opportunities for young people to access once they finish their GCSEs, because we do know, university is not always the right pathway for everyone, and there are other pathways that people can take that might be better suited for them.
I couldn't agree more, to be honest with you. I actually fainted doing my maths O level and somehow still managed to pass. I've still got no idea how that happened. But it's interesting that this focus now is on, Rishi's focus seems to be on how much you're going to earn once you've taken your exams and sat your degree. Do you think that's the right way to encourage students to go to university and study?
Absolutely not. I think you should take a subject that you really enjoy, you're passionate about, and you believe that will help add some value once you finish your degree and then end up doing a career. I do recognise the fact that the degree is becoming less worthy of a value, especially with the increase of Mickey Mouse degrees. And I think that's something that definitely needs to be looked at. But by introducing compulsory study of English and maths up to 18, that's just going to make the problem even worse. It's going to limit people's opportunity to be able to access university and make A-levels a lot harder. I think especially for some people, they've got real core interests and talent in particular subjects that might not be your typical English, maths, science. They might be really talented in other fields. And I think that's something that we should celebrate and should be encouraging young people to do, not just have to study English and maths up to a certain point. And I think it will really limit opportunities by introducing a policy like this.
And when's your final exams? How long have you got to go?
Oh, so for me, I'm actually going to my final year of university.
Excellent. Well, good luck with that, Anna, and thank you so much for joining us today. Good to hear some common sense. Thank you very much. Now we're going to move on to what everyone else is saying. So let's have a quick look at some of the messages you've been sending in. Ron, you say requiring pupils to study English and maths beyond GCSE would quickly expose how many pupils are failing those subjects. They would be unable to access a more advanced level of curriculum. Meanwhile, Anna Louise says, if we want a literate and numerate workforce, then yes, science should also be studied beyond GCSE. Oh my God, I was rubbish at that as well. So there's some hope. It will also help future politicians and leaders understand the complex issues humans face today. Hannah, meanwhile, says pupils should study what they want, but the government should subsidise higher education courses that help the national need. Meanwhile, Steve, you'll say, I wish the government would stop telling us what to do, let people make their own choices. Well, hear to that one. So actually, I'm Dawn Neeson. You're with me. I'm covering for the lovely Nana this week on GB News, on TV and digital radio. Coming up, we'll continue our great British debate. I'm asking, should students have to study maths and English beyond GCSE? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, counsellor and former Conservative advisor Claire Pearsall and political editor of the Sunday Mirror and Sunday People, Nigel Nelson. But first, let's have the latest news headlines.
Thanks, Dawn. It's 5:31. I'm Simon Pusey in the GB newsroom. The family of Archie Battersby are calling for an inquiry following his death, saying no parent or family must go through this again. The 12-year-old died on Saturday in the Royal London Hospital after weeks of legal battles. In a statement, the family said they'd had to fight for Archie's right to live with everything stacked against them. Bart's Health NHS Trust has issued a statement saying medical staff had provided high-quality care with extraordinary compassion. The Environment Secretary is urging water companies to ban the use of hose pipes as forecasters predict dry weather for most of the UK next week. George Eustace says some firms have rightly taken action to lessen the effects of an unusually dry August, and he's encouraging others to do the same. Last week, Southern Water and South East Water imposed bans for their customers. Taiwan's military says it has detected 66 Chinese Air Force planes and 14 Chinese warships conducting drills within the Taiwan Strait today. 4 days of drills by China were finally due to end, but China has since threatened to conduct drills of these kinds regularly. It follows a visit to Taiwan by the US House of Representatives Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Israeli and Palestinian fighters have agreed a truce from this evening following 3 days of violence. Egyptian negotiators have been liaising with both sides to de-escalate. The region has been seen shelling from both sides in recent days following a strike by Israeli forces on Friday against jihadist militants. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to Dawn.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
You're with Dawn Neeson covering for Nana this week, and this is GB News on your TV and on your digital radio. It's time for our great British debate this hour, and I'm asking, should students have to study maths and English beyond GCSE? Rishi Sunak has announced the education policies that he hopes to implement should he become the next Conservative leader. His plans include creating a new British baccalaureate which would make the study of English and maths compulsory beyond GCSE. So, I'm asking, should students have to study maths and English beyond their GCSEs? So, let's see what my panel have to make of this one. They were having a very lively debate during the break, by the way. We should have filmed that. It was actually quite interesting. It involved one of them telling the other one where to go, but they are married to each other. So, forced to study maths and English up until you're 18 years. Is this a good thing, bad thing? I mean, Claire, what do you reckon?
No, it's definitely not a good thing. Speaking from experience, my maths was not great.
I'm feeling the pain on that one.
And given that we expect our schools to conform to certain standards, and a lot of schools won't take students on if they don't achieve certain grades, they won't take them on to sixth form to do their A-levels in the first place. So what happens if you are an A-star or a grade 9 or whatever the things are these days in English or in chemistry or in drama or music, but your maths isn't great, then you've lost that student to your school. They have to go and then find somewhere else. So I think, none of this has been thought through. And this is always the problem when politicians come up with something on the hoof like they're doing pretty much on a daily basis at the moment. They need to stop doing this and think about things properly.
And you're talking as a Conservative as well, Claire. The thing is, there was fascinating figures out today. Rishi is making, on average, 2.6 promises to voters every single day. Meanwhile, Liz is making 2.7 promises to voters. So that between them, they've made a total of 144 pledges.
Yeah,
so this is just stop now, OK? Because none of us believe you. So this is the latest one, basically. So what do you make of this, Nigel?
Well, I agree with Anna totally. It's an absolutely insane idea. If kids are to make the most of education, then learning as far as possible has got to be a joy. And the only way you can do that is if they're allowed to do the subjects they want to do, as Anna is doing, that she want to do English, she's passionate about it, therefore she'll make the most of it. And you can see perfectly clearly that she's going to get a job, no problem.
Absolutely, she'll come do this job now, to be honest with you.
As soon as she leaves university.
Yeah.
So while I think it's actually important to have a basic knowledge of English and maths up to the GCSE level, to go any further, no, it's not necessary. I was, like everybody else around the table, I was useless at maths too. So useless, in fact, it was before GCSEs, but the school wouldn't even allow me to take the O-level.
Oh, really?
And
I was better than that, Nigel.
And I don't think I've been disadvantaged in my career since. What maths I've needed to learn to understand economics, for instance, to do my job, I've learnt on the way, but broadly, I don't think I missed out on anything. But more importantly, you really must be doing subjects that you love. And that's why A-levels are as they are, that you are taking a very small number, because that's what you can concentrate on.
I must admit, some of the stuff I attempted to learn during my maths O-level, because I'm a similar age group, I've never used any of it. No. All the logarithm thing, what was that? We used to have books full of tables that you had to learn, and it's like...
I don't know, I was that clever. I never had those.
But I've still got no idea what they were and what we're meant to use them for, but I have never used them.
And I still can't do percentages, but nowadays I just Google a percentage calculator and it solves the problem.
Well, it's cheating, that's cheating. But the other interesting point I think Rishi was making about what he wants to do is he wants to crack down on poor value universities and clamp down on degrees that don't involve earning potential. Now, surely this is just basically then saying that arts degrees, which are the ones that tend to lead on to careers where you don't earn high money, are going to be cancelled. No one goes to study art or drama anymimore. What do we think of that?
And this is half the problem, is that what he considers to be earning potential, good earning potential, is very much a matter for him and his team. But the rest of us, people go to university to study something because they love it and they want to do well in that and they want to study more and learn more, and that should be encouraged. Nobody knows at 18, because I certainly didn't, what they wanted to be when they grew up.
Yeah.
So what you go off and study may actually lead you into something else. You may go and study drama, which then could lead you on into theatre world, it could lead you into journalism, it could lead you into television and media, or indeed into politics. So I think you can't shut anything off. And yes, all right, there are some degrees that you do look at on paper and you think, I'm not convinced that there is any point in doing it. But if that individual wants to go and spend their money and end up in debt to do it because they want to do it, they enjoy it, they love it, then that's their choice. We shouldn't take it away just because somebody at the top thinks it's a really bad idea.
Yeah. And if you got rid of art subjects, which it seems to be what Rishi is sort of aiming towards, who would look after our culture? You would lose all those people there. And when it comes down to what subjects are actually useful at university, I've asked many politicians, because a lot of them had studied politics at university, whether it's been of any use to them at all in their career. The answer from every single one of them is no. Because you are studying a theoretical thing, not the practical thing. Once they get down to actually doing the job, they find that all the things that they'd accumulated from university doesn't work anymore. So it's teaching you. So what it should be about is teaching you how to think.
Yes.
Beyond that, once you've done that, you can go on and do almost anything else.
But it's really interesting that you said about percentages. You couldn't do percentages, and you Googled them. I was really rubbish at maths, properly rubbish, but I got a job in sales. So I had to learn very, very quickly to do percentages because my commission and therefore my paycheck at the end of the month was dependent upon it.
Yes.
So I learned to do that really, really quickly. So to put a monetary value to me made that process a lot easier.
Yeah.
Perhaps school should have taught me that the whole way along, put a money factor into it, and I might pay attention.
But it's
You're
not.
not going to let me forget that weakness, are you?
But I mean, if you actually analyse, so if Rishi had his way, right? Okay, the average are jobs that pay the most after 5 years or after leaving university, right? Information systems, 47,000, followed by computer engineering, petroleum engineering, information technology and computer science. So I'm not saying any of these jobs are bad. Of course they're not bad. But they are all the science and technology degrees. And as you say, where would we be without entertainment? I mean, sort of like people watching us now. This is entertaining, hopefully. And it's like the arts degrees that pay the lowest. I mean, sort of the lowest paid is the very bottom of the list is creative arts and design, which even after 5 years after leaving university, you're only earning £20,000. And you might be horrified to learn, Nigel, that also on this list is journalism. £23,000 after 5 years after leaving university. Yes, absolutely. But that involves media studies, and I'm never quite sure what media studies actually was.
And I think that's the problem, isn't it? And a lot of these degrees could be cleared up, and you could possibly put a few of them together, and you could put in sort of technical production alongside media, and then you'll put out.
There will be degrees, won't there, where actually you do need that degree to do whatever you want to do next. So if you want to be a doctor, you've got to go to medical school.
Yes.
If you want to work in computers, computer science is a pretty sensible degree to take. But again, it's what you are keen on and what you will get the most out of.
Yes.
And also there's a massive gender balance problem when you're looking at STEM.
The STEM,
subjects
yeah,
anyway.
absolutely.
So
yeah.
I think he's missing that point.
Yeah, no, I think he's missing a lot of points, to be honest with you. Right, OK, now, so we are going to move on to the Great British Voice, and this time round we are going to welcome, this is your opportunity, by the way, to get on the show and tell us what you think. I mean, how did you do at maths? I mean, we were all fairly rubbish at it, and I'm getting fairly rubbish at operating the autocue at the moment. So let's head over to Bristol to speak with GB viewer Lee Harris. Good afternoon, Lee.
Hi, Dawn.
Hello, how are you?
Not too bad, not too bad. I was agreeing with most of what you guys were saying about being rubbish at maths. I'm also rubbish at maths.
Has anyone out there actually been good at maths? I mean, including Rishi Sunak, feel free to give us a call. But so come on, what I mean, would you have been happy to be forced to study maths up until you were 18 years old?
No, because I wasn't very good at maths, and I didn't like it very much, which didn't help. But I probably would have struggled with it. I as I'm told, I think there's a big jump between A-level maths and GCSE maths. So I think I've seen a few A-level maths subjects, questions, and they look genuinely very difficult. So I think it wouldn't. But no, I don't think it's necessary to force kids to study English and maths up to 18. I think at 16, pretty much everyone's got a good enough understanding to apply for most jobs, in my opinion. I think that the students that this would benefit would probably take these subjects anyway. So, yeah, I don't think it would benefit a lot of people personally. But yeah, it would have been too much for me. I'm a self-taught web developer, so English and maths were pretty useless for me, to be honest. I just do code, different coding languages, and that's it. So
pardon?
Coding languages would have been rubbish for maths.
What coding language? What's that, Lee? Sorry.
I build websites, so it's just HTML, CSS, JavaScript, PHP. It's different languages.
You're talking a completely different language. I've got no idea what you're talking about, being probably ancient and old. So did you go to universities to do that?
No, a lot of people that I know who are also developers did go to university. So I'm not saying that it's completely useless, but it's mostly useless because once you've printed a lot of the literature, it's out of date. Because everything in the web development world changes so quickly that it is pretty pointless printing. There are basics that you can get from a course, which probably quite good, but it doesn't go much further than that. I don't think what you need as a web developer, if anyone is thinking about getting into it, I highly recommend it. It's a great industry to get into, but you just need a good portfolio. You need a good you need to build your own websites. If you haven't got businesses to build websites for, this is what I did. I now run my own business. I've been doing this for 10 years now. But yeah, just build some websites, build your portfolio up. That's what people are interested in. People want to see you and what you can do. It doesn't matter if the business exists. You can make up a pretend company and let people know that it's a pretend company, obviously, and build a website and get noticed. That's what I do.
Lee, I think that's a really, really good point. And the young lady, the student, made it earlier on as well. It's not all about education. It is about experience, apprenticeship, and learning on the job. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon, Lee. Really appreciate it. And now we're going to move on to some of your messages that you've been sending in on this subject. And Susan, you say maths and English should be taught at a university level, as many students arrive at university without the basic skills needed to excel in their chosen subject. Well, it's a fair point, to be honest with you. Annie says, it's all right for Rishi Sunak as he is good at maths. Well, allegedly, we are paying the highest taxes in 70 years. That wasn't really good computing, was it? Even at GCSE, maths and English are both hard. No way should students be forced to study those subjects beyond GCSE. Meanwhile, Barbara says, it's wishful thinking from Rishi. Half of school pupils study with basic grammar and maths is even more of a challenge. Meanwhile, Trevor, you say, if English was taught properly up to GCSE, it would not be necessary to do it post-16. By that, I mean spelling and grammar. Alan says, Rishi is clueless. Yeah, I think a lot of people would agree. Lesson 1, hedge fund managers should leave education to those who know what they are talking about. Does he want our kids to have nervous breakdowns? And meanwhile, Bab says, in the 60s, when we entered the lower sixth form, oh God, the lower sixth, I mean, instantly in Blighton territory, we had to take an exam called the Use of English. It prepared us for writing letters, applications for jobs, and a variety of skills in our own language which help us in the future. I think that's a really, really good point, actually. I do remember that. We had something called office practice. I mean, it was a girls' school, and it prepared you for working life. It wasn't just an academic fancy subject. It actually prepared you for life in the real world. And I think so many more kids now should be taught about household budgeting, you know, and what it's really like to go out and work in jobs. But anyways, we move on now. So thank you for all of that. And it's time for Supplement Sunday. I feel like I should have some sort of music to go with that. It's the part of the show where me and my panel, or my panel and I, grammatic, is that the old see?
It's that use of English O-level, you see.
I've got A-level, you cheeky thing. Not that you've noticed. When we look at some of the other stories making the papers today, I'm joined still by Conservative councillor and former Conservative advisor Claire Pearsall and the political editor of the Sunday Mirror and Sunday People, Nigel Nelson. So, our first supplement of the day, you should have buzzers for this. We had buzzers yesterday. This is the buzzers already. Our first supplement of the day is from the Mail on Sunday. According to the paper, moustaches are making a comeback. I'm just checking nervously. I couldn't remember if Nigel had a moustache or not. In recent times, an array of celebrities have been spotted donning a tash, including Justin Bieber, Harry Styles and swimmer Adam Peaty. So I mean, I got married in the 80s, where I'm convinced every man had a moustache. And I actually have to look at my wedding pictures now to see whether the husband had a moustache when I married him.
Did he?
He didn't. No, he's probably the only one in the 80s that didn't have a moustache. So, you know, tashes. I mean, you don't have one today.
I don't have one today,
not.
and I have never had one except once. That I once grew a beard, and it itched so much that after the holidays were ended, I shaved it off. But I left a little Hitler moustache to amuse my children.
Right.
I then got rid of that too. So I had a moustache, I suppose, for about 20 minutes.
Right, OK. A Hitler one's probably not the best look, Nigel, if you don't mind.
Probably not, but it did actually amuse the kids.
I'm sure it did, yeah. I mean, Claire, what do you think? Moustaches, are they sexy?
No, I don't think so. I'm watching the Commonwealth Games yesterday, and it was something that we both actually commented on.
You look like the village people.
God, there are a lot of them, aren't there?
It was the sort of the 70s porn star look come back. Yes. It really was, and they were little moustaches, and really,
and big moustaches.
But, I mean, no, please can people not do that? And when you see the amount of care that some gentlemen put into their moustache, I think they take longer in the mirror than I do.
Yeah.
And using different oils and lotions and
there's a lot of grooming involved in that. There is actually an official, I can't remember what it's called, there is an an official fear of beards and facial hair and moustaches that some people have. I can't remember what it's called, but I'm sure
somebody will phone him.
Someone will let me know in any case. Right, now we move on. So a story from the Metro. Energy companies, them again, have encouraged customers to keep paying their bills after a campaign emerged urging people to cancel the direct debit payments in protest against rising costs. To date, tens of thousands of Brits have already cancelled their payments. Right, OK, so what do you make of that one? Go on strike paying your bills. Strike is the word of the year, isn't it? So.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I don't agree. I don't think people should stop paying their bills at all. I think this is the way to madness and debt and, just pain all round. However, I do think that the direct debit system is abused by a lot of these companies who say that you're going to pay one amount and then decide to change their minds and increase it and just tell you, we've increased it, by the way. So, I think we need to have a little bit of a better relationship with the energy companies right now.
Have you tried having any relationship, Claire? Have you tried phoning them? Your call is important to us, so you're number 600 in the queue.
Yeah, and it's a terrible... That's why I leave it to the husband to deal with. I offload that job. But I don't agree with people not paying their bills. I think you do have to pay your bills, but actually put a standing order rather than the direct debit.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I'm one of the few people in the entire country that's actually got a refund recently because we've been overpaying because they were charging us a fortune, and they've been sitting on this money for nearly a year. And it's like, suddenly we owe you some money. But
hope they pay you interest.
A year? Well, yeah, quite. I didn't ask that bit. So, Nigel, are you going to go on strike?
No. I mean, I do think that the only way of not paying bills is if you're planning to skip the country. Otherwise, you're risking... you're not just risking sort of ending up in court. You're risking ending up in jail. I do think, though, unless they get a handle on the cost of living crisis, we are in for major civil disobedience.
Yes.
So I think the government ought to actually really watch it and make sure that they do something about it. But no, simply not paying bills ain't the answer.
No, and I think certainly a lot of the older generation, like my mum's generation, are the ones seriously worried about their energy bills, and they're also the ones that would never dream of not paying a bill. They're that generation where they're brought up not to have debt and to always pay their bills. Right, and finally, this is my least favourite story of the day. It makes me want to cross my legs. The Mail Online, Channel 5 are set to show a woman getting a hysterectomy on air. This is the first time something like this has ever been televised. The episode will follow the story of retired teacher Gillian Libretto and will be part of a TV series focusing on women's health. Now, I get the importance of focusing on women's health. I'm not entirely sure I would classify watching someone having an operation, and she's not going to be unconscious, she's going to be awake, as evening entertainment. What do we make of this one? Claire, I'm going to go to you first as a woman. I'm crossing my legs just thinking about it.
Yeah, and when I read this, I just thought, no, please don't, please don't. I quite like a medical programme. I'm quite interested. But this one just feels a little bit of a step too far. Women's health, really important issue.
Of course,
menopause,
of course.
really important issue. Highlight all of those things. I'm not convinced we need to see this one happening live in front of us.
It does sound a bit scary. A man's point of view on this, would you like to see her hysterectomy?
I'm a bit squeamish anyway, so I probably wouldn't watch it. But the whole thing is, why stop there? Why not have hip operations being screened before you actually go in and have one yourself, or a knee operation, or heart surgery? I'm not sure it helps terribly. If you really want to watch because you're having to go through one of these procedures and you want to know what happens, OK. But I'm not sure it's actually going to reassure people. So at the end of it all, I'm not sure it's necessary. And I take your point, Dawn. Do we really want this as entertainment?
I'm not sure. I mean, Mrs. Libretto, who's 75, said that the point of her taking part in the show was to educate young women about the risks of having babies later in life. So therefore, I'm assuming she did that. But she ends the programme by actually holding her removed womb in her hands.
Yeah, I see, and that to me is just all a step too far. I'm not convinced that anybody needs to see that in their life. I'm not sure it needs to be on television, and I think there's probably some educational video clips out there on the internet. Should you wish to know what the procedure encompasses?
Yeah, no,
this is just a bit too much for me.
I'm not squeamish, and as a journalist, I have sat in on operations with a photographer, a male photographer, who promptly fainted behind me. So I'm not squeamish, but you know, I think I'll stick to the soaps, to be honest with you. Well, on today's show, we've been asking, should cyclists face tougher sentence for killing pedestrians? According to our Twitter poll, 95% of you say yes. Look, thank you so much to my panel today, and thank you all for joining in. It's been wonderful to have you joining us, and thank you, and we'll see you again at home. We'll see you at home again. What am I doing? I'm inviting myself round to your place. I'll be back at 4 p.m. next Friday, but now I'll leave you with the weather forecast.
Looking ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK will be mostly dry, although cloudiest in the north with light rain for western Scotland. Here are the details. A fine end to the day across southwest England with plenty of late evening sunshine. It will remain dry throughout this evening and tonight, with temperatures only slowly falling away. Across southeast England, clear skies will persist this evening, leaving a fine and dry night, although warm with plenty of sunshine to end the weekend.